Hello. How are we all doing? I'll try that again. How are we all doing? Hey, that's better. Give me a shout if you're alive. 6 years, that's good. It's going to be a long 15 minutes for both of us. Yeah, can everybody see me? Yeah, that's good, because I am standing up. Yeah. I actually can see all of you, because I'm in a great spot. I'm here all night. I'll just start off with a poem, if you don't mind. The Toy. The pub was jammed, the drink was flowing, the crack was high, but I was sad. I tried to speak but couldn't, the pain inside was hard. Last order was shouted, and I had this dread inside. The darkness had entered me for the first time in years. The rain crashed against the umbrella, my mind was not in charge. The door we opened in silence, to the kitchen we ran. Wet coats off, the vodka and coke was found. The ice was made of plastic, which tasted wrong. The madness was coming, my bullying voices rising high. Arguments started to follow. I had my first thought I should die. I hear the demons inside me say I'm worthless and a fool. My drunken mind agrees as I get up from the stool. I see my son's toy before me, the Ratoath crest embroidered on the front. I pick it up with reverence, knowing what I have to do. Suicidal thoughts hit me. I no longer want to be a burden, horrible or cruel. I wrap the toy around my neck until my face turns blue. I hang from the kitchen wall. No one knows what I've done, but the coat holder breaks and I awaken like a fool. It was not my time to go then, and I began to cry, realizing what I tried to do, the pressures of life too high. I told her in the morning to explain the broken wood. She hugged, cried, then kissed me. I no longer felt like a fool. Thank you. Bet you weren't expecting that. Yeah, so just as a show of hands, can you raise your hands if you know anybody that's actually survived or died from suicide? Look around. It's powerful, isn't it? As you can see, I still have my hand up. I know someone that's really, really close to me who tried to kill themselves. That person is me. I wrote that poem with my first suicide attempt. And other than my wife and a counsellor in Pieta House, I told no one else. No one else. And now I understand that not talking about those demons had led me to try it again a couple of years later. My second suicide attempt was a more public affair. It was the afternoon, the day after St. Stephen's Day in 2017, when an ambulance called to my house in broad daylight in Ratoath to take my drugged, drunken, sleeping body to the hospital. On both occasions I tried to kill myself, I drank a lot of alcohol. And now I believe that the alcohol acted as the fuel to the mental flames in my head. And that's why I tried to kill myself. Sometimes when you actually do try to kill yourself, it's not good. In terms of my suicide story, it's been difficult to share. And obviously, as you can gather, it's kind of difficult to share now. So in terms of fun thing, is how are you doing? How are you doing? Good. Don't say fine. Yeah, I used to say that a lot. I'm fine. Fine, yeah. Obviously, I clearly wasn't fine trying to commit suicide on those 2 occasions. But the crazy thing about it was I had another successful attempt a couple of years later, which really kind of hurt me. One of the most difficult conversations I had was with my kids. The light in our kitchen gave an almost Nazi interrogation feel to the whole conversation. And although I was beside them, I felt that I was miles away. I wasn't trying to be distant on purpose. It was just the drug still in my system, and the embarrassment and the shame. And when they asked me how I was, I lied. I said, I'm okay. At least I didn't say I was fine. And as I saw the tears forming in their eyes, I felt nothing, absolutely nothing, until they said, Dad, when you were unconscious in hospital, we were thinking about organising your funeral. We're too young to be organising your funeral. Although I heard their words, I couldn't say that trying to kill myself was probably the most altruistic thing I'd ever done in my life. I felt that that was the only way I could get out of there. So I knew I needed help. And it was a cold, damp January morning in 2018 when I arrived at the primary care centre in Ashbourne. It took me an age to get out of the car until I mustered enough courage to get out. The main feeling I had was fear that someone would recognise me in there. But I got out and I met with a HC counsellor. And she asked me a number of questions which I found it tough to answer. But the one question she asked me the most was there any incidents in my childhood that would have caused the issues and the effects of actually trying to attempt my own life? I'd blanked out my childhood for many years, memories mostly bad, that I put in the deep recesses of my mind as a self-protection mechanism. One of the memories that I did have, one of my earliest ones, was actually as a 4-year-old living in a tenement slum in Parliament Street beside Dublin Castle. It was a dark, dreary and scary building to a 4-year-old, and I felt on my own constantly. I was the oldest child, and we lived in the very top of that dilapidated, damp dump. My mother had 2 babies who were lost as they were stillborn, and my sister had died prematurely as well. So there was a lot of grief and trauma in my life at such an early age. I had another sister, and my parents spoiled both ourselves. My mother spent as much money as she could and hours on our appearance, and we were always in immaculate clothes and dressed like 2 tiny ceramic dolls. And I remember there was random moments where women used to come up to the three of us when we were walking down the streets of Dublin, and the old ones would actually go, Jesus, missus, you've got 2 gorgeous kids there. They're beautiful and dressed in beautiful clothes. And twins, 2 twins, twin girls, it must be amazing. Twins. I was 4, my sister was 2. One of the joys of being born a Smurf, I suppose. Yeah, and then they normally kind of go, okay, Jesus, what do you want to do now? But it was a crazy time. And around that time, Dublin Corporation were keen to get people out of the tenements and into the suburbs. And my parents had a choice of 2 lovely inner city north side flat complexes. One, the idyllic sleepy hamlet of Ballymun, or 2, the idyllic and leafy O'Devany Gardens. I know, talk about caught between a rock and a feckin' rock. Yeah. But my dad's sister lived in O'Devany, so that made it an easy decision for my parents. So we moved to O'Devany, and unfortunately OD was his nickname, and OD was the sad fate that befell many of the young lads and lassies that were born there in that concrete heroin abyss. Around that time, I hated school, basically because I found out that if you were clever, it was another reason to get bullied, and I felt there was no way out. Around that time, the constant slagging about my long hair, my clean clothes, my posh voice, and more than ever, the slagging about my height, or lack of it, had a huge impact on me. And I felt it was feet smaller than anybody else in my class. I went to school, in primary school, to St. Paul's, Brunswick Street. Annie is old enough to remember that was the school made famous by Paddy Crosby as the school around the corner. And it was a question asked of my 4th class teacher, a Christian brother. Now there's an oxymoron. A Christian brother. He was a sadist, and we later found out that he was a paedophile too. But he never touched anybody from the flats. Every cloud, I suppose. And now that I think about it, that question that he asked me was probably the catalyst for my first time escaping it all. He asked the question, and he essentially went, Mr. Marx, what is the capital of France? I knew the answer, but I just wasn't going to answer him for fear of the other vampires in the class to bully me even more. Marx, what's the answer? Again, I said nothing. Mr. Marx, you ignorant little pup, get up here now or you'll get 6 of the best. Again, I said nothing. Get up here now. I walked up slowly, reluctantly, like a condemned man, to the desk. And that overgrown, obese excuse of a man took out a thick leather strap and hit me 6 times with the force of his 18-stone frame. I didn't cry. I didn't want to give another reason to the bullies in the class to bully me even more. I walked home in a trance with my tiny hand red raw and stinging. I didn't want to do anything stupid. The thought of suicide was just not in my little head. I just wanted to float away from this mad world, a mad world that I didn't ask to be born into. I scaled 100 or so wet steps in the flats, ran through my front door, got into my bedroom door, and without thinking, climbed outside of my bedroom window, walking along the ledge 100 feet up. I walked around for a while, sat down, and dangled my little legs over the edge while looking at Guinness's brewery in the distance. I got up on that ledge a couple of more times, but unfortunately, I scared the bejesus out of a neighbour opposite us who saw this child walking along the ledge. So my mother bought locks for the bedroom windows, and that was the end of my burgeoning tightrope career. And now that I think about it, people that suffer from anxiety and depression, we're kind of on that ledge for what feels like an eternity. To conclude, despite the increases in mental health amongst middle-aged men, there's been no solutions. For me, my idea of writing down, if you can't talk about it, writing it down. I wrote, obviously, the poem. I wrote a couple of other pieces, including a one-man play, which I hope to put on at a venue near you soon. But obviously that has helped me enormously to, one, identify the demons in my head, to silence the demons in my head, and then to understand where those demons came from. And I urge everybody that's experienced the black dog that if you can't talk about it, write about it. And it might give you the power and the catalyst for the courage to be able to talk and address those feelings. Thankfully, I haven't tried suicide since 2017. And hopefully, I never will. But if I can help just one person with my story as a survivor of suicide, then it's my duty to tell that story as often as I can. Thanks very much.